Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport. We've talked about this many times before. The pilots competing here are people who are always in front of the world. Talking about advertising deals, collaborations, races, and sponsorships, we have already gotten used to seeing the pilots in front of the camera in social life. Some Formula One pilots took it to the next level and stepped into the world of cinema and television. While some directly step into this world as players, the life stories of some of them have been the subject of films and documentaries. Let's start with one of the greatest examples of acting in the racing world. In the movie Asterix at the Olympic Games, released in 2008, there were two familiar names. Jean Todt, team principal of Ferrari's Dream Team in the early 2000s, and legendary driver Michael Schumacher prove in this movie that he can be very fast in Roman times before Christ. As per the story, a chariot race must be held at the Olympic Games. Schumacher, on the other hand, participates in these races to represent the Germanic race in the Olympics. Jean Todt's analysis of the track and the race and transmitting radio messages to Schumacher, Schumacher's Ferrari red carriage, and especially the pit stop scene are enough to make this movie unforgettable for Formula One lovers. During the filming years, Schumacher was arguably the best in the Formula One world. That's why blending this scene with F1, a powerful marketing move for both parties. It is a section that I have watched fondly for years. I recommend it to all of you. Things are a little different in the movie Driven, in which Sylvester Stallone produced and also acted. During this period, he wanted to edit the movie Stallone Driven based on Formula One. In fact, it was possible to see him on many tracks in the periods before the shooting. When he contacted the teams and Formula One management with this idea, some confidentiality agreements prevented the film from being directly based on F1. Stallone then decided to base the film on the American kart series. When I heard that, I was sad that the Formula One movie was interrupted. My only consolation is that Driven is a mediocre movie. I don't know if there would be a change in the quality of the movie if F1 was involved. It is possible to see ex-Formula One pilots Juan Pablo Montoya and Jean Alesi in the movie Driven, even though they didn't have big roles. The Bobby Deerfield movie is a bit old, but it contains a legend like Al Pacino. The story of a drama-filled racing driver. Some scenes of the movie were shot during the 1976 Formula One season. It is possible to see important Formula One figures such as Mario Andretti, Hans Stuck, Tom Price, Bernie Ecclestone in these scenes. The images that the film shot for itself without taking any footage from Formula One are also quite successful. If we leave everything aside, it's nice to see Al Pacino racing with real Formula drivers, even if it's for the script. The 1966 film Grand Prix is one of the highest-grossing films of the year it was shot. It was recorded using the most advanced technology cameras of the period. The unique racing cinematography is one of the main features of the movie. The film also features real-life racing footage of drivers such as Formula One, world champions Phil Hill, Graham Hill, Juan Manuel Fangio, Jim Clark, Johan Rindt, and Jack Brabham. This film won 3 Academy Awards for its technical achievements. Another movie where we see a pilot directly as an actor is the movie Taxi. Jean-Louis Schlesser plays himself again in a rally stage in this movie. Actually, Schlesser doesn't have a great Formula One career. He only participated in 2 races. But I said let's not forget that. There are pilots who have acted in more local productions that we have definitely skipped. But these were the prominent roles in the international arena. Although this type of acting has been limited so far, I think things will change in the future, because sports began to become much more mediatic. Formula One was a much more closed structure in the 90s and early 2000s. Bernie Ecclestone management had a direct involvement approach to drivers and teams. Therefore, the freedom areas of the pilots and teams were also indirectly restricted to this. With the world changing and the sport changing hands, Formula One has become a much freer structure. Pilots and teams can explain and implement their collaborations much more easily. An important element at this point in Drive to Survive. He continues to produce content on behalf of Formula One every year, whether he likes it or not. In this series, it is possible to see the superior acting skills of some Formula One pilots and team bosses. Drivers who broadcast during the pandemic period, social media posts, TikToks, Reels, commercials, pilots have a great internship in front of the camera, so I am sure we will see many more of these in the future. The production of Fernando, which was released during Fernando Alonso's 2-year hiatus from Formula One, also shows us that the number of productions that directly focus on the lives of pilots will increase. Names such as Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso, Andretti, Vitaly Petrov, Villeneuve, who participated in the Cars series with their voices, should not be missed, even if they are not in front of the camera. These pilots voiced different characters in different movies. Localization was done by changing some of the characters according to the countries where the movie was released. Pilots such as Vettel, Alonso, and Petrov also performed voiceovers in their native languages. Since we entered the animations, let's continue from there. There is also an animated series in which the pilots are not directly involved and their characters exist. Published for 5 seasons between 2012 and 2016, Tooned focused on the drivers who competed with McLaren at that time and their little fictional stories. This series, which is broadcast on the Broadcaster channel in England before each race, is still available on McLaren's YouTube channel. Animations of pilots such as Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen, Fernando Alonso, and Stoffel Vandoorne were included in this cartoon series. At this point, our last title is Formula One Stories, which are the subject of movies and documentaries. First, let's start with the Rush movie we all probably know. Niki Lauda's James Hunt bickering on the big screen. I think it's a great movie. There is a separate video about this movie and the competition on the channel, so I don't want to prolong it. The Senna-Prost rivalry, one of the biggest rivalries in the history of motorsports, is also explained in detail in the Senna documentary. Senna's step into Formula One, his achievements and his transformation into a legend are all in this documentary. Similarly, the Fangio documentary. While researching the life of Juan Manuel Fangio, I have benefited from this documentary many times. The Schumacher documentary broadcast on Netflix is one of the productions that has been on the agenda recently. It is a production that offers the opportunity to remember the recent past with the comments of the Schumacher family and friends. It also provides us with many ideas about Schumacher's social life and family relationships. Champions Weekend is a production created by recording Jackie Stewart's moments at the 1971 Monaco Grand Prix by the famous director Roman Polanski. This documentary film was not released for 40 years after a small festival screening. Years later, when an archive contacted him, Polanski re-edited this film. It was published in 2013, with an afterword of approximately 15 minutes showing Polanski and Stewart talking about modern-day Monaco, their friendship, and race safety. Although there is an incredible media production and consumption in the world, until today, the share of Formula One in cinema and television has been quite small. The reason for this may be the shooting costs and the unstable interest in sports, but it would not be wrong to predict that things may change in the next generation.